welcome back to another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with the movers and shakers, the film and TV makers, those producers, directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, film editors, sound mixers, sound designers, VFX gurus, composers, stuntmen, stunt coordinators. We talk to them all, as you all well know. Now, welcome to this particular week. I'm very excited about this week's show. Of course, last week I was thrilled to have Simon Phillips and Jamie Bailey with us. And I hope you're all catching the Omro heist. That's all I got to say. I hope you're catching it because it's a lot of fun. But this week, I'm very excited about the films we'll be talking about and the filmmakers we're talking with. As we're looking at two films that at their heart are about fathers and daughters and a father and son. First, there is the wonderful family film Sketch and the fugitive thriller She Rides Shotgun. And joining me are two amazing filmmakers, Nick Rowland, director and co-writer of She Rides Shotgun, and Seth Worley, the writer, director, and editor of Sketch. First, let's take a look at She Rides Shotgun, which is the story of Nate McClusky and his daughter Polly, who are on an emotional, thrilling, terrifying road trip across New Mexico as Nate tries to escape his own past. He just got out of prison. People are chasing him, and the news is reporting a double murder at Polly's house. You take it from there as to how this story might go. At the very least, Nate wants to protect his 11-year-old daughter from paying for his mistakes. Along the way, they're driving a series of stolen cars, going from seedy motel to seedy motel. They take shocking risks. They survive threats. And we watch them truly become father and daughter. Polly doesn't even remember her father. She was just a baby when he went to jail. So one of the beautiful things about this film is that as we are watching the father and daughter connect and develop a true father-daughter relationship, we are there almost in real time watching it happen as it's happening on screen. It's really wonderful. And what is standout here is the strength of the character of Polly, as she musters courage and insight well beyond her years. And Nate displays vulnerability and a fortitude he didn't know he had. It's a wonderful emotional journey for both of these characters. She Rides Shotgun is based on the 2017 Edgar Award-winning novel of the same name by Jordan Harper. The film, it's really an intimate two-hander between Polly and Nate, but it's also a fast-paced fugitive thriller, but turns into something that's heart-rending and pulse-pounding with a tonal and moral integrity that just binds these two together as they navigate the complexity of the situation. Directed by Nick Rowland and co-written by author Jordan Harper along with Ben Collins and Luke Piotrowski, She Rides Shotgun stars. I'm talking award-worthy performance here, people. Anna Sophia Hager as Polly, Taron Egerton as Polly's father Nick, along with Rob Young, David Lyons, Odessa Azion, and an out-of-the-box amazing performance by John Carroll Lynch in a role unlike anything you've seen him in before. How often is John Carroll Lynch, one of the nicest guys on the planet, I must tell you, how often is he villainous and evil, pure evil? Well, that's what you're going to see in She Rides Shotgun. One of the things that impresses me most about this film is that it stays firmly rooted in Polly's perspective. From story to dialogue to eyeline, we see this story unfold through her eyes. Now, as you'll hear Nick talk about in this exclusive interview, the real highlight of the film is the emotional depth that young Anna Sophia Hager brings to her performance as Polly. And again, you will be amazed watching her. Taron Egerton is wow. He is commanding and vulnerable and fearful as Nate. But you put him together with Anna, and their father-daughter dynamic as Nate and Polly is off the charts. Similarly, you're going to hear Nick rave about John Carroll Lynch and his off-camera gentle demeanor with Anna, which was crucial in order to have some very intense and violent on-screen scenes take place. There has to be that great comfort level, especially when you have a child involved. So the fact that John is such a teddy bear, I love hearing Nick talk about how important that was for this film. Now, despite limited time and resources, we're talking low budget, no budget, micro budget films, Nick emphasized the authenticity and flexibility in directing and the latitude that he had to bring this together with his vision. The film's visual style, influenced by the beautiful New Mexico landscapes, is beautifully lensed by cinematographer Wyatt Garfield. And the icing on the cake is composer Benjamin John Powers' score, which balances tenderness and brutality, enhancing the emotional narrative. Musically, it is not what you expect. But there's a lot in this film that you don't expect, so it's perfectly suited to it. So, here's Nick Rowland. Take a listen. Hi, Nick.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going great. How's it going for you today?
It's wonderful. Very, very excited to have the film coming out, and enjoying sharing it and getting it out there.
You should be excited about it. I didn't know what to expect when I started watching this film, and I have to say, you reeled me in.
Okay.
Starting with Anna. Anna is just amazing as Polly.
Incredible, isn't it?
Oh, it's not often you see a young actor who has the emotional depth and range that she has and that she conveys. Her emotionality is astounding. And she had me hooked from beginning to end here. How did you find her, Nick?
That was the central anxiety I had. I read Jordan's book, and then I read the script, and I loved both. And I was very moved by it, and you'd be surprised at how rare that is to really emotionally be moved by a script.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dyslexic, so if I read a script in one sitting, that's always a sort of sign that I probably am very excited by it. But then quickly, once you find out that you're making the film, it's like, okay, how on earth are we going to find Polly? Because as you say, what was required of Anna was a huge amount of emotional range, but also emotional bravery and resilience, and it's also really difficult to do all of that in 25 days, which is the time we had to make the film. We didn't have any pickups or no sort of additional photography available to us, so we had to sort of get everything in a very small amount of time. And especially with Anna's age, she was 10 years old when we were filming, so we couldn't really even do full days with her. So it was a huge amount of pressure for her. But through the casting process, we were seeing young actors from obviously, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, all over really. And Mary Vernew was, our casting director, and just found some real gems. But there was something about Anna, just her emotional wisdom and the complexity that she was really able to handle quite, I don't want to say effortlessly. She's been honing her craft for a long time.
Right.
But there was a real fearlessness and a real bravery and a real confidence to the way she works. And honestly, I could work with Anna in exactly the same way as I could work with Taron or any other, sort of older actor. And I've done a couple of other films with, that's really required like quite a lot of complexity from a young actor, and Anna, normally I've had to sort of change the way I direct a little bit. And I remember on my first film, Calm with Horses, I worked a little bit with Lenny Abrahamson, who had just done Room with Jacob Tremblay, maybe a few months before. So he was sort of, guiding me towards what worked for him and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, when it came to Anna, I found that I was working with her in a very similar way to Taron or anyone else.
Yeah, she is just absolutely astounding. And I look at some of those scenes, Nick, and there are veteran actors that could not have pulled off what she does. And to really capture those emotional beats, especially we get into that third act, and oh my God, your heart is in your throat watching her. And of course, you pit her up against, in that third act, John Carroll Lynch, who, number one, the most evil John I've ever seen out of his career, totally unrecognizable, and he scares the bejeebus out of you. What a casting coup. What in the world would make you think of mild-mannered, nice John for the role of Hauser?
Well, I mean, I think, partly, as you say, he's very mild-mannered. And I think what was really wonderful, his performance is fantastic. That goes without saying. He's such a legend of our industry and screen history. So it was a real privilege to work with him. But what was really wonderful to see is how gentle he was with Anna. And, considering he was playing our antagonist and our villain, and, there's some quite charged scenes with Anna. He was such a gentle soul with her and made her feel so safe and comfortable. And despite how sort of intense the film is, we actually had a lot of fun working with each other. And Anna, was having, sometimes it was a job to get her to stop giggling and laughing and having such a great time with John. So he was the perfect choice.
Wow. But of course, the heart of this film comes down to the dynamic between Polly and Nate and Taron. Here again, when he first appeared on screen, I didn't recognize that it was Taron. But watching the dynamic, the relationship, the dad and daughter relationship develop between Polly and Nate, this is the heart and soul of this film. And Nick, you knocked it out of the park at conveying that. There's always something about, everybody talks about fathers and sons in films, but the bigger thing is the whole father-daughter dynamic. Throughout time, there has always been a very special and unique relationship between fathers and daughters. And watching this one develop from its infancy, really, because Polly was so young when Nate went to prison, she doesn't remember him. She has no real reference point. Absolutely astounding. So I'm curious how you curated this relationship so it feels like it's in real time for us watching. And then a lot of that comes from calling on your amazing editor, from Julie Monroe, with the pacing of this. Can you talk to me about how you developed that? Because if that had fallen apart, there would be no film. There might be a film, but it would definitely not have the heart that this one has.
Yeah, I think, that was always the challenge. And I think, when you're looking at making a film like this for, not a huge amount of money and not a huge amount of time, obviously in pre-production, a lot of the energy and the excitement does go towards the stunts and the sort of bigger sequences. But always for me, the challenge of the movie was Holly and Nate's relationship. And I have quite an allergic reaction to kind of child performances in movies that don't feel authentic to me. It really pulls me out of the movie. And so that was always going to be the challenge. And I think it was sort of exacerbated by, because of the time and the sort of limited resources, I decided to cut a lot of the early, in the original script, there was more context of the gang that was after Nate. And it was more kind of explicit, the stakes of what they were up against. And when I needed to sort of, find a way of making, shooting the story in the time that I had, I decided to cut those things and really focus in on Polly's subjective experience of the story. So in that way, we sort of drip-fed information. She overhears things and things like that, but then suddenly you're left with the first 20 minutes of the movie with not really feeling the stakes. So then I decided to really focus on kind of, in a way, establishing Nate as the antagonist to begin with, or at least posing that as a question. Who is he? What are his intentions? Is he good? Is he bad? And for that to be the sort of the engine of the tension in that early part of the movie, which I think works, but then it puts an awful lot of pressure because very soon they have to sort of start to warm to each other and connect and find their love for each other, I guess. And in that sense, I think it wouldn't have worked if it didn't feel organic and true. And I think, all I can say is that there were the phrase that I used all the time on set was that I wanted us to have confident curiosity. And what I mean by that is that we know what we need and we know the story we're trying to tell, but we're open to discovering what that is. So if any time something doesn't feel real or true, we had permission to play and explore. And I always wanted it to feel like the stakes for failing were very low. So there's no right way, there's no wrong way. There's no one looking stupid or foolish. And there was never the right way of doing a scene, and in that, for example, one moment I can think of off the top of my head is just before the haircutting scene. Polly sees that Nate is stressed when he's on the phone, and she offers him a potato chip and encourages him to play this game of guessing what flavor potato chip. And that's, that wasn't something that was in the script, but we were struggling to believe the transition into the next scene, and it's just something we organically discovered through only leaving the scene when it really felt like we believed it, and actually ending the scene with her trying to help emotionally regulate her own father was actually the key to that moment. So I think it's just sort of paying attention to and being alive to the gifts of the moment, and when you don't have much time to shoot, I think my job as a director is to make sure that the actors never feel that pressure of time, that there's always a sense of play and discovery, even when secretly, my first AD's very thinking we should have moved on an hour ago. Or whatever. That's the tightrope that we walk.
That is always the tightrope that people walk when shooting, especially with a limited budget. or a restrained budget. But you definitely made the right choice with giving us breadcrumbs or drip feeding us information. And the shift really does start to start to get a clearer picture around the 24-minute mark of the film. After the potato chip scene and Nate sleeping in the motel and Polly, now we hear a clearer version of the newscast. We heard a little bit earlier that there had been a double murder, but now this time we really get to hear it. The sound is clear on the TV, and Polly sees and hears it. The shift, the emotional shift at that moment, that's when this connective tissue really starts taking shape, and you just lean into it for the rest of the film, and it just worked so perfectly. Really well done in that respect, Nick.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm curious. I love your visual tonal bandwidth here. You never go really heavy or dark with the visual tone. You let the emotional tonal bandwidth provide all the darkness and the situation that we have. That's where your darkness comes, but you kept your visuals light, bright, most of them in the daylight. What was the working with your DP, with Wyatt Garfield? What was that collaboration like to develop this visual grammar?
It was wonderful. I mean, me and Wyatt had never worked with each other before, but I was a huge admirer of his work. And I don't know, I don't really think too much about, I don't try and impose a style on anything, but I do, I would, if I were to describe myself as a filmmaker, I would say I'm not a particularly intellectual one, but I'm a very emotionally driven one. And I like to feel, and I like to be moved, and I like to understand what something feels like from inside, subjectively from inside the character. So I think everything in terms of the color palette and the way the film is shot is really just trying to root us in Polly's perspective. And so sometimes there'd be scenes, very early on in the shoot, there was this one scene, and most of the close-ups were of Anna and hermit crabs, and we have our huge superstar Hollywood actor Taron, and I think I only did a wide shot of him, and I thought this feels, it kind of instinctively feels like I should be getting more focus on Taron, but it's Polly's story, and it's seen through her eyes. So that's really sort of drove the style. And I kind of, I don't know what my, also kind of shooting in New Mexico, it felt like such a mythic place. It gave so many gifts, and that's probably why I decided to change. The book is set in Los Angeles, but since we were in New Mexico, I thought it would be a shame to try and limit ourselves by recreating Los Angeles and not embracing all of the beauty of New Mexico. So I think a huge part of why the film looks so good is just because there's something really special about New Mexico. And I kind of wanted the film to have a naturalism, but for it to be able to surge into more expressionistic moments and expressionist color palettes. Because to me, it's not, although there is a naturalism to it, it is a bit of a fairy tale. It's a bit of it always seemed like a bit of a Western to me. And I wanted it to, while being grounded, I wanted it to be heightened, and I wanted it to have a slight fairy tale feel, because it's not, points of the story are certainly not realistic. It's about something that feels emotionally engaging and true. So things like Polly's hair in the book, she decides to dye her hair bubblegum pink, which is pretty cool in the book, but it's like, okay, well, if you're trying to blend, if you're trying to sort of hide from people, maybe going bubblegum pink isn't going to really true. But I still wanted there to be I wanted there to still be a kind of pulpy kind of something that took it out of reality a little bit. So that's when I thought, well, maybe he tries to dye her hair blonde and it goes terribly wrong, and it kind of goes a bit orange and a bit blonde and a bit, a bit sort of wacky, and have the hair cut in quite a blunt, sort of awkward way, just so that there was some little visual touches that just kind of took us out of naturalism, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And I have to say, the hair cutting, hair dyeing scene was hilarious. And the fact that you come in with close-ups of the of the bathroom sink, and he's got a bottle of bleach there. Bleach. Not L'Oreal or something to color the hair, but bleach and baking soda. And every woman out there who colors their hair is going to go, oh my God, what is he doing to this child?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a fantastic scene. But then her reaction when she sees the end result, it is beyond gleeful, and it is like it tugs at your heartstrings, because even though she may think, yeah, it is kind of bad, she is not about to tell her father that, because he's so proud of what he did and she's so proud of him. But it's moments like that where you do take us out with bleach and baking soda and cutting her hair with scissors, the kid blunt end scissors that she obviously had in her school backpack. You have lots of little touches like that.
For any fathers out there, I do not recommend it as a way of bonding with your 10-year-old girl. I think it works.
I would highly suggest, you're right, Nick, that is not a good bonding way for a father-daughter or a mother-daughter. I could show you pictures of what my mother did to my hair growing up. So I sympathized with Polly greatly. So one last question for you, Nick, about She Rides Shotgun. Your music, your score is quite interesting. It's subtle, but it fits, and it has like a softened, almost a Western vibe to it. So you really lean into the New Mexico history of cinema and the Western ideals. What were you looking for musically to complement and buttress these performances and your visuals?
Blank Mass, or Benjamin John Power, is the composer of the movie, and this is the third film we've done with each other. And I never want to make a film without him. We're very much emotionally in tune, and I think what I love about Ben's work is he is able to hold tenderness and vulnerability in one hand, and with the other he can take us to quite sort of harsh and brutal, almost kind of horrific places. And he can do that in a palette that feels very connected and whole, rather than feeling like you're being manipulated and pulled from one place to the other. He sort of masterfully is able to kind of dance between the two in a way that feels organic, I guess. And really, in terms of, again, it comes back to all of the choices were always just about trying to root us in Polly's world, and what does this feel like? So I guess there is a degree of melancholy to it, but beauty, and I feel, I guess it's sort of an extension of, I would say, my films in general. It's holding tenderness and brutality in the same breath, and sort of letting them talk to each other, I guess. That's what I love about this film, and I hope that's what people respond to, is that sort of combination of softness and hardness.
Done a beautiful job with this one, Nick. I have to congratulate you.
I appreciate it.
I want to watch it again, because there are so many subtleties in here. But it just job so well done. And I can't wait to see.
Watch it in the theater as many times as you want. Just keep buying those tickets, and I'll be so grateful.
See, that's just it. That's where I want to see it next. Is I do want to see it in the theater, because of the beauty of the cinematography and the location. That's where I really want to see it, is the theater. But I can't wait to see what you bring us next. This is wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to keep working. Want to stay in America now that I'm here.
Oh, Nick, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me about She Rides Shotgun, and I hope we get to do it again in the future.
Sure we will. I'll make sure of it.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
And that was director Nick Rowland discussing the action-packed emotional thriller She Rides Shotgun. And you can see She Rides Shotgun in theaters right now. It just opened on Friday, August 1st. So I highly recommend it. The film does have some flaws. And a couple things that, were I producing or directing, I would have altered. But it works. It's intense. You will be riveted. And you will be mesmerized by Anna Sophia Hager, let me tell you. Now we're going to switch gears to another father-daughter, father-son film. But this one is for the whole family to enjoy. And it's called Sketch. And oh, how I love this film. Making his feature directorial debut with Sketch is Seth Worley, who not only directs the film, but is writer and editor, as well as working on some of the CG compositing within it. Sketch is the story of the Wyatt family, Dad Taylor, daughter Amber, and son Jack, along with Taylor's sister Liz. Grieving the loss of their wife and mother, Amber's having a particularly difficult time coming to terms with her mom being gone. And Taylor and Jack are so worried about Amber that they forget about dealing with their own grief. Focusing her anger and grief into her art, she loves art, which is very dark for an elementary school girl. The school psychologist encourages Amber to continue to draw, to have her own special notebook for her drawings, with the idea being it will channel her grief and help her come to terms with her mother's passing. But what happens when Amber's drawing notebook falls into a strange pond and her drawings come to life with all of the unpredictability, chaos, and destructive mayhem that Amber drew on the page? As these monsters come to life and take over the town, Amber and Jack, together with their friend Bowman Lynch, and yes, you must call him Bowman Lynch, must track down the creatures before they leave permanent damage. In the meantime, Taylor, together with his sister Liz, is racing to find them through the fallout and navigate through a town in crisis to reunite his family and stop the disaster they never meant to unleash. A Sketch is a fabulously fantastic film. Creative, imaginative, vibrant, colorful, filled with heart, and entertaining and fun. In this exclusive interview, Seth discusses Sketch, highlighting the exceptional casting of Bianca Bell, Q Lawrence, and Kaylin Cox as Amber, Jack, and Bowman, respectively, as each brings so much authenticity and believability to their roles. And as I pointed out to Seth, Kaylin Cox, he is like a young Danny Bonaducci. So for any of you that may not know who Danny is, just Google an episode of The Partridge Family from 1969, 1970, and you'll know what I'm talking about. These are kids that are being kids, but Bowman has a couple too wise for his years moments that are just so much fun. You can't help but enjoy them. We see the sibling dynamic and the friend dynamic, and then the parent-child relationships, most notably between Amber and her dad. Interestingly, this story was inspired by a childhood memory of Seth's and a drawing of his sisters. Tony Hale, who I thoroughly enjoy Tony in this film, is cast as Taylor, Wyatt, the father. Tony is also a producer on the film, and he and Seth have been working on this film for the past 6 or 7 years. And as Taylor, Tony brings an emotional honesty to the role as a dad looking out for his kids while ignoring his own emotional distress. How many dads always put their kids first and forget about themselves? And that's what you see unfolding here. It is that authenticity and honesty. The monster designs and the visuals are gobsmackingly delightful and meticulously crafted to look just like the drawings in Amber's notebook. Color is king in this wonderful world, as the vibrant colors, together with the film's visual grammar, courtesy of cinematographer Megan Stacy, were carefully designed to enhance the storytelling. You'll hear Seth go into great detail on the visuals and the visual grammar, as well as bringing the monsters to life with textures that are like those in the drawings: crayon, Sharpie markers, chalk, colored pencils. This is one of the standout subtleties of the film that I really appreciate and love as they unfold. The result is just stunning. And serving as editor, in addition to director and writer, when it came to editing, Seth calls it a smooth process, thanks to a well-honed script that he and Tony Hale had been working on. And you're going to hear Seth go into detail on the visuals and the visual grammar. The visual grammar is really, it's wonderfully executed and designed for sketch in terms of using ECUs, using two shots. And you're going to hear us get into great detail on those topics in this interview. And you're also going to hear Seth talk about the emotional truth and honesty within sketch, the production challenges and considerations when working with children, and how that can affect your day when you're shooting. Plus his own lessons that he learned with this debut feature, and the importance of preparation and collaboration, and so much more. So it's a fun interview. Seth is he's exuberant, he's enthusiastic, and he loves this film, and you see it on screen, and you hear it in our interview. So take a listen as writer, director, editor Seth Worley talks about the vibrant, heartwarming, fun, and entertaining sketch. Hey, Seth.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I'm very excited to talk with you this morning. I am in love with sketch. This is...
Oh, well, thank you so much.
So creative. It is so vibrant and colorful and has a really heartwarming story.
Thank you so much.
I didn't know what to expect with it, and you blew me away. I was enchanted from beginning to end, and you've got incredible casting. These kids, Bianca, Q, Kaylin, my God, you knocked it out of the park with your casting. And
we got very, very, very lucky with them. I remember asking my casting director, it was a friend of mine, Jessica Sherman. I called her in the summer of 2022, and I was like, hey, I need 3 kids. I need them to be incredible, and I need them in like 2 weeks. And she brought us Bianca and Q and Callan, and they were just these talent-fueled machines built in a lab somewhere that were incredibly professional, incredibly talented, but also incredibly hard workers and kind, and their parents were cool. And like my wife and I were just talking after we just did a bunch of press together with them this past week and at the premiere, and it was like, God, we got lucky that literally everyone in this movie we liked being with and hanging out with, and those kids are absolutely included in this.
Kaylin blew me away. He reminded me of like a young Danny Bonaducci.
That's a great comp. I completely support that. He is, Callan is so funny. He loves the spotlight, and he uses it to his greatest advantage. When we premiered the film at the Toronto International Film Festival, we did a Q&A after, and Callan basically did like a set of stand-up for everybody. He was just like, he owned the room. Yeah, he's so funny. And
when he's on screen, he owns the screen. But watching the dynamic between the characters of Amber, Jack, and Bowman is just wonderful to see. It is, the relationships are so authentic. We've got the sibling relationship of Amber and Jack. We have the taunting, pain in the butt, elementary school level relationship between Bowman, Amber, and Jack. And to watch that flourish and develop is just beyond delightfully charming.
Oh, wonderful.
Your direction in bringing that to fruition with them is just, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal, Seth.
Thank you.
I know that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're working with kids.
Well, it was for me on this because of those kids. I mean, honestly, they were, like I said, they were they were so easy to work with. They were so good at taking in my hackiest, most micromanaging, like even my worst notes that I would give that were like, on this syllable do this, and on this syllable channel the inner whatever. Like it, they would take my worst notes and like nail them completely along while continuing to nail my notes from all the previous takes. They were a blast, absolutely a blast.
Oh my God. But this whole thing, it begs the question, where did you get the idea to tell this story?
Well, when I was a kid, my sister got in trouble for drawing a picture of her teacher getting pelted by arrows, and there was enough blood in the picture to get everyone nervous and merit a visit to a counselor. And the counselor asked my sister, like, did you really want to see this happen to your teacher? And she said, I did when I drew it, I don't now. And the counselor said, well, I think you did the right thing. I think drawing this was a much healthier choice than actually doing it. And I remember hearing that and thinking, that's the coolest thing anyone's ever said to a kid. Like, what a badass thing to say to a kid. This thing that made everyone in your life, all the adults in your life, sweating and nervous, is actually evidence that you're a good person, making healthy emotional choices. And I just thought, that's the kind of adult I want to be in some kid's life when I grow up. And then I grew up, I had my own kid, and one day, when my daughter was in kindergarten at the time, she brings home these pictures that she's drawn, and they're just inventively violent. Just an unprecedented amount of parent death and blood and monsters. And we had not let her watch horror movies at this point, and so it was like, where is this coming from? And I'm looking at these, and I realized, oh, I'm capable of believing two things at once. I'm capable of believing that art is the safest place for violence, while simultaneously believing that my daughter is a serial killer and it's somehow my fault. And that tension felt really funny to me. It felt really writable, like immediately writable to me. And it felt like a Tony Hale role. It felt like a Tony Hale role, to be completely honest. And that was the genesis for the idea of Sketch.
Tony fits the bill perfectly. As a father who needs to understand who understands the two sides of the coin, the drawing, the emotions, and you really pace it out and structure it well as to the emotional revelations that the characters have stemming from the absence of their mother and his wife. It really is beautifully portrayed and develops very naturally. Nothing ever feels forced. And that's so important in this film.
Yeah, Tony and I, well, talking about it, because, I wrote it for Tony, but like a coward, I just asked him to read it as a friend, and then once I knew he liked it, I was like, hey, what if you were in it? And then he came on as a producer as well, so he's been involved from the very beginning, and he and I learned about Tony very quickly that he's not as occupied with comedy as he is with truth, and particularly emotional truth. He comes at everything, all of his characters, from a place of emotional honesty and a real grounded human place, believe it or not. Like, believe it or not, Buster Bluth is coming from a grounded human place. And that's partly why he's so good at what he does, is that instead of trying to be the funniest he can be, he's trying to be the most honest he can be, and that multiplies the comedy by 1,000. And so in developing the story together, we were always focused on the emotional truth and honesty of the story. And I mean, you know, it's funny, when talking about this movie, you know, right now and promoting the movie, we're finding ourselves talking a lot about emotional health and grief and providing a safe space for your kids to process the complex emotions through art and self-expression. And it can make the movie sound like it's a real drag when it's like the opposite. It is a big, like, crazy, fun, blockbuster, comedy-driven movie, and a comedy-driven adventure movie, and has some really, like, scary parts as well. And it's like, so it's funny to keep reminding everybody. I know it sounds like a drag, but it's actually really fun. But we really wanted kids. One, we wanted the movie to appeal to every human being alive, not just kids, not just parents. We also really wanted to make sure that parents weren't just tolerating this movie, that there was almost even more than the kids, that there was value for them to find in the film as well, and for even adults without kids to find that as well. But we also wanted kids to leave, and adults to leave feeling empowered to use art and creative self-expression as a way to process the scarier and more complex things that we can feel and go through when life happens to us. But we also wanted parents to leave the theater feeling empowered to create a safe space for their kids and themselves to be able to do that as well.
Talk about art here as a safe space and a manner of expressionism for emotion. Did you come up with the look and design of each of these creatures and Amber's illustrations? Because they are fantastic. And then the way they are brought to life. I love how each has texture based on whatever medium she used in drawing them, be it a Sharpie marker, be it crayon, be it chalk. That
was definitely a big, like, that was a big breakthrough early on, was that idea that what if they were made of whatever she drew them with? Because I didn't want them to be like flesh and blood, like direct literal interpretations or not literal, but like the kind of expected interpretations where they would come out with like slimy, gooey skin and blood and you know, like both skin and bones. It's like I wanted them to be her drawings, like physically just like pulled off the page and brought to life size in 3-dimensional form. But I also didn't want them to be like 2-dimensional, like hand-drawn, you know, cell animation. I wanted something in between, and it took a lot of trial and error. We had, you know, in designing them, what they would look like, we had to take into account both what they would look like as drawings and then what they would look like as monsters, as you know, brought to life monsters in the 3D model versions of them. And that wasn't a directly linear process. We had an amazing concept artist named Michael Cribbs, who he and several other artists did a first round of concept art for us. A few of the monsters I knew, and we have, I think, around 11 monsters in the film. You know, just a, you know, friendly tip to other indie filmmakers. If you're going to make a monster movie with very little money and resources, like, try not to do 11 monsters, but we still did it and survived. But I knew what some of them would look like, and but a lot of them I didn't have a specific look in mind. And so Michael helped us find a look for each of them, and we honed in on some designs that I really liked. And then we took those designs and handed them off to our kids and let our kids take a pass at copying them. We just asked them to look at these pictures and then draw them. Like, don't trace them, but just copy them. And then we took those back, and Michael took all the asymmetries and like some legs being longer than the others and like wonky disproportions. And Michael worked all that stuff back into the concept art. And that became our main concept art for the monsters. And then we had an artist on set named Christian Gale, whose job was to channel the spirit of a depressed 12-year-old girl and draw, like he drew all of the drawings, all of Amber's drawings across the movie. And some of them are direct, like interpretations from the concept art. Some of them were drawings from drawings that my kids had done or other kids had done. And some of them were drawings that I, a 40-year-old man who can't draw, had done. And his job was to unify them and make them all feel like they were drawn by one character. And then in post, our visual effects, our 3D modeler and sculptor, an artist named Mark Lundgren, modeled all the monsters in Cinema 4D. In Cinema 4D, which is a 3D animation software and sculpting. He found a look for them that used essentially, instead of just like you would just like usually sculpt a monster and have this 3D mesh of a monster that you would then texture and shade and render. He had this idea to sculpt them, but then populate that sculpt with what's called a cloner. So basically, it's like instead of giving that monster like skin and texture, he gave it like thousands of just flat cards that each card had a hand-drawn crayon scribble on it. And so what you're looking at when you look at the monster is actually, it's just a big cluster of crayon scribbles.
Wow.
And it's a 3D model, so it therefore has dimension. It has texture. It can be shaded and lit, but it feels, and it still feels tactile and real, but it also has that scribbled crayon look to it that makes it feel like it's in this uncanny valley, but in a good way. And then a big part of that kind of sealed the deal on. Well, also when he did that, we found a lot of fun opportunities in their looks as 3D models that dictated us going back and in post and actually modifying some of Amber's drawings on the page to make them match the final monsters better. So it was a nonlinear process that was constantly like just following what worked best and being able to go back and adjust. And that's kind of how we ended up with the look that we have.
It was well worth whatever process you went through for the end result that we have on screen. And I have to say, it's like the colors are so vibrant, are so beautiful, even down by the pond. It's like sidewalk chalk drawings out of Mary Poppins that have come to life around the trees and whatnot. But your color selections are beautiful. You really stick pretty much in like a Crayola box of 12 for the colors that you pick.
You.
And I think that's so key because of the fact you got a kid drawing, and not every kid is going to have a Crayola 64. So,
Love that.
How did you pick your color schemes? Because it feeds off of the vibrant greens of Mother Nature and that wooded area where you're shooting.
Yeah, the environments of where they're, each of our main hero monsters get a specific, like, kind of, we call it, say, attack sequence, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And the setting for that sequence would very much speak into what color we wanted the monsters probably should be. If it's going to be primarily in the woods, it shouldn't be a primarily green monster, although with one exception, there is one that counts. But the eiders, for example, which are my favorite monsters, which are these red spiders made of chalk that have eyeballs for bodies, and they come as a giant horde of them, and they're my favorite because I love the imagery of the iconography of an eyeball, and I also my first movie I ever made in 6th grade was with these Taco Bell novelty straws that Taco Bell would sell every Halloween in the 90s called Monster Eye straws, and there was this crazy straw with an eyeball in them. So they're kind of an homage to the Taco Bell Monster Eye straws. but I specifically wanted them to be red because I love because they're chalk. If you crush them hard enough, they burst into powder, and you crush enough of them, the air is going to get hazier and hazier with red chalk powder. And I just love the imagery, the idea of just like a hallway filled with red haze, and what that would look like, and also what the house would then look like in the wake of that. Once the dust settled, it looks really scary to have red covered all over everything, but it's not blood. That did come back to bite me when we tried to put our PG-rated movie, we tried to put a trailer for it in front of like Lilo and Stitch, and I basically had to bite the, just bite the bullet and be like, okay, I know it looks like blood. We'll recolor it or we'll adjust. Like everybody thought it was blood in this, in a trailer where you don't have the context for it. But it created such a stark, like harsh look with it being red. And then I also, one of the first monsters we see in the movie is this big blue one named Dave, and we wanted that one to look as goofy as we possibly could. Like we just wanted to see if we could make a monster that felt threatening and absolutely goofy at the same time, and making him blue was a big part of that. I'd be like, how do we make him feel like he should be friendly? Let's make him the color of Cookie Monster,
Your color selections are absolutely fantastic. Now, you also edited this film, so you're writing, you're directing, you're editing, you're juggling all the hats as you're going through this process. How challenging was the edit on this one? Because you've got the VFX coming in with the monsters, so of course, that you're going to do a cut and paste and coming back in with your editing later. So how challenging was the edit to keep the pace of the film going while not hindering you too much in the editing process?
It's a great question. Honestly, Tony and I spent like 6 to 7 years trying to get this movie made before we finally got to shoot it. And as a result of that, we had a lot of time to hone the script and whittle it down to its absolute key components. And so we shot a tight script, and with the exception of one scene, which was like one tiny little scene, we shot everything that was written, and everything that we shot is in the movie.
Wow.
So it was already a well-oiled, like efficient story by that point. So it made editing really painless, to be completely honest. Painless within the context of your standard pains that come from watching an assembly, your first assembly and wanting to die. But if you go into your movie knowing that your first assembly is going to make you want to quit life, then you aren't as crushed by it, and you trust the process. I once back when Twitter was a fun place to be, I remember I asked several of my favorite filmmakers that were on there their experience with first assemblies, if they'd ever watched one they liked, and so many of my heroes responded saying no, no one likes first assemblies. And Phil Lord and Chris Miller specifically were we actually don't watch a first assembly all the way through. We always only watch it reel by reel. We'll watch a reel a day and give notes on them, and then on the second, once those notes have been addressed, then we'll watch the long play in full. And so I did that on this, and it helped me from wanting to quit and abandon the project, because your first assembly is always going to be incredibly difficult. And so go into it knowing that, and so I focused reel by reel, and then I watch it, I show it to friends and a close network of confidence, and they gave me honest feedback, and we locked the edit pretty quickly. I mean, we wrapped the movie at the end of August 2022, and by the end of November, the edit was locked, and we were ready to move into visual effects. The visual effects were the hard part. That was absolutely the hard part, and that took a year and a half to finish. Partly just because a lot of it was just convincing the powers that be to unlock some extra resources to get them done.
VFX, visual effects, You want them good, especially in a film like this, and that does take money. So the pocketbook needs to loosen up a bit so that you can achieve what you achieved here.
And thankfully, it did. You know, we made the decision. We knew my VFX supervisor who came in during post. We looked at it and realized we don't have enough money to do these monsters but we might be able to get access to a little bit more. Let's prioritize one scene. Let's put all the money we currently have into at least building all of the creatures, modeling all of them, and then animating, shading, rendering, and comping one sequence. And so we focused on the bus attack sequence. And out of that, we were able to, by doing that, we were able to show like a finished sequence working to the powers that be and say, this is what we're going for. This is why it's taking longer than you might have expected, because I know everyone thinks, oh, it's kids' drawings. How hard is this going to be? Well, this is an example of what we're trying to do. We're trying to do something more than just kids' drawings, 2.5D, you know, like jankily animated around. We really, like, this is something special we're trying to do. And thankfully they saw it and were like, oh, this rules. Let's make this happen. And even then, the amazing vendors that we got to work with, that we brought in, like, everybody on this project held themselves to a standard way higher than we were giving them the money and time and resources to achieve, and yet they achieved it anyway. And I will forever be grateful to all of them. And that's why I ask that everybody read every single name in the credits, please.
And that is exactly why I watch every film to the bitter end until the curtain goes up. Is because of everybody who worked so hard on films. They deserve to have us in the audience sit in our seats to see their name roll by.
Amen.
That is just, it's always been a particular bug of mine, even with press who get up and walk out of a press screening before the credits roll. It just aggravates me to no end. I will be honest, Seth.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how, from a directorial standpoint, because you're working with kids, you're limited in the number of hours you have them per day. And when you get to a sequence like your school bus, the school bus accident, that's an action-heavy sequence for kids. And, you know, how did having them working with kids so exclusively in much of this film, how did that impact your shooting days?
A lot, of course, but it wasn't. The trick is showing up to set ready to, like, expecting that, and to showing up to set prepared in a way to where it won't be a surprise that you're running out of time with the kid. Meg Stacy, our DP, she and I would spend every weekend in my office drawing out every scene on the whiteboard, acting every scene out, staying in close touch with our first AD, Tyler Wilson, and showing up to set with a plan where we were making creative decisions, keeping in mind the availability of our actors, and in making blocking decisions and shot decisions, knowing how, like, being very intentional about how many kids are in each shot and how much coverage we need of each sequence, and just showing up. And even then, we still had to problem solve on the day and pivot. But that part of it is the stuff that, like, is fun. It's not. I mean, it's not always fun, but that's the part that I feel like I was put on this earth to do. It's the part that just comes to me, like, naturally, of, like, oh, we're screwed. We have this kid rapping in 30 seconds. What all do we need to get? And I love figuring out in that moment what's the very bare minimum we need to get with this kid before he's gone, and then how can we shoot out the rest of the sequence with their stunt performer, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How can we hide their face in the scene, et cetera. And so it's just preparation and collaboration is the only answer I could possibly give, honestly, to that question.
And I do have to say, working with Megan Stacy as your DP, the visual grammar that the two of you came up with, it's just wonderfully executed and designed, particularly when it comes to the use of ECUs. You really limit your use of extreme close-ups to drawings in Amber's notebook, the plate that gets broken, you really just, that's about the only time you use them. And the rest of the time, you're sticking pretty much with 2 shots so that we have multiple kids in the scene. We've got Amber and Jack together, Amber, Jack, and Bowman together. And I really love that design, that visual grammar design for this film. It works so well.
Oh, thank you so much. Meg is amazing. Working with Meg was one of the most satisfying collaborative experiences of my life. She's incredible at what she does. She's an incredibly hard worker. She's incredibly smart, and she also had just she loved this movie. It was like she read the script and called me and was like, whether I work on this or whether I get this job or not, like whether you hire me or not, I just want you to know I love this movie. And we developed such a wonderful shorthand across this movie, and being able to, and I love that. Thank you for calling out those specific creative decisions, because we were very intentional about keeping the eye line at the kids' level, keeping the camera even possibly below the kids' level at times, reserving close-ups for when they really, really mattered, but also, like you said, it's a movie about relationships. It's a movie about siblings. It's a movie about family. We wanted to make sure that those relationships were visually represented in the frame at all times, whenever we could. And also make sure that we never felt like we were shooting a scene with coverage to make our day. Even when we were trying to make sure that every shot felt designed, and every shot felt like we had a ton of time to get it.
And you definitely succeeded there. I've got one last question for you, Seth. I've got to know, this is your first feature directorial. So what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker with this long-form format that you can now take forward into future productions and projects?
That I can do it, honestly. I always believed that this was what I wanted to do, and I'm making shorts and commercials for so long, and commercials came pretty natural. I mean, shorts always came naturally. Commercials took me a while to feel comfortable at. But walking on a set day one of Sketch, it fit like a glove. It was just like, it came more naturally to me than anything. And that was the most encouraging part of all of it, was that, like, even when times were stressful, it felt like this is exactly what I'm on this earth to do. And that was the most encouraging thing to feel. And it's allowed me to go into every project since, and every project in the future, with a quiet confidence that, like, I belong here, which is something that I think everyone deals with imposter syndrome, and I definitely still do. But I'm able to look at this movie and this experience and remind myself, like, no, bud, you're good at this. You got this. Like, keep going.
Well, you definitely do got it. I got to tell you, Seth, and I can't wait to see what you come up with next out of this very creative and imaginative mind of yours. Fantastic job. I love this film, and I want to see more from you.
Oh, thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, and you go have a great rest of your day, Seth.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. And that was Seth Worley talking about Sketch. And you can see Sketch in theaters, only in theaters, this Friday, August 6th. Do not miss this film. It is a great family film. Not for tiny little tots, though. Just because of the monsters that come to life, even though some of them look really cute, there are some darker elements to them, even though they're not dark when you look at them. But tiny tots, no. But I would say from first grade on up, I think you'll all love it. It is, and it's a great film because everybody's going back to school, some starting in August, some starting in September. So this is a great end of summer film for the family. and for the kids. So, that is all the time we have today. Check out She Rides Shotgun. That you can see now. Check out Sketch on Friday when it hits theaters. And then join me again next week when you're going to hear from director Chuck Russell. I love Chuck Russell, people. He's the man behind Eraser with Schwarzenegger, Paradise City, Dreamscape, Scorpion King, The Mask, just Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And now his new film, Witchboard. He is rebooting the 1980s Witchboard franchise. But this is a Witchboard like you haven't seen. So I can't wait for next week when you get to hear Chuck Russell talk about this film. But until then, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.